We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Tesam and Beis Meseches Makkos. This is Makkos Daf 19b. On the previous summit, the Gemara asked by Meiser Sheni, can Meiser Sheni be eaten in Yerushalayim if there is no Beis HaMikdash? And the Gemara said that we can learn it out from Bechor, and Bechor itself is learned out from a Hekesh. We're Makish the dam of the Bechor to the meat of the Bechor, and then we make another Hekesh to Meiser Sheni. And the Gemara asked on the previous summit, but you're not allowed to make a double Hekesh in situations where you're learning out something by Hektish. And the Gemara answered that Meiser Sheni really is not considered Hektish. It's considered to be chulin, and that's why we are able to make such a limud. But the Gemara now continues and asks, that works according to the one who says that we follow the thing that is being taught to, meaning we're learning Meiser Sheni from Bechor, and so Meiser Sheni is chulin, so you can use a double hekesh. But according to the one who says that we follow the Malamed, meaning that which we're learning from Bechor. Bechor is certainly hektish. So so what are you going to say? You can't learn the double hekesh if the Malamed is something that is hektish. And the Gemara answers that Damu Basar Chada Milsihi. According to that Manda Amar, we will simply say that the blood and the meat is really all one thing. It's not even considered to be an initial hekesh. It's really considered to be that it's all the same thing, just like the dam obviously is put on the Mizbeach when there is a Beis HaMikdash, so too the Basar, again, there has to be a Beis HaMikdash, so that is not considered to be learned from a hekesh, and that's why we can learn Meiser Sheni from Bechor. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said Kodshe Kodshim v'chulu, and the Mishnah goes on to say that Meiser Sheni chutz l'chom. If one eats Meiser Sheni outside of the walls of Yerushalayim, the punishment is malchus. And so the Gemara asks, Tanina Chodazimna, didn't we already learn that one time in the Mishnah? In the previous Mishnah it said Meiser Sheni v'hektish lo niftu. It said if you have Meiser Sheni or hektish that was not redeemed, and so that's the same idea that you're going to get malchus for that. Why is it repeated in the second Mishnah? And the Gemara continues and answers. Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says, Seifa b'Meiser Sheni tar v'Gavra tar. In the Seifa, meaning in this Mishnah right over here, we're talking about Meiser Sheni that is pure, and the person eating it is pure. And what's the problem? The problem in the Mishnah right here, is that he's eating it outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. But the beginning of the Mishnah, meaning the first Mishnah, that's b'Meiser Sheni tamei v'Gavra tamei. That's talking where the Meiser Sheni was tamei and the person was tamei. V'Ka'achalei b'Yerushalayim, and he's eating it in Yerushalayim. That's what it means when it says Meiser Sheni Shalom Niftu. It's talking about Meiser Sheni Tamei in Yerushalayim that was not redeemed. Again, there's Malchus for that. And the Gemara continues, now from where do we know that a person is liable if he eats Meiser Sheni B'tumah? Either he's Tamei or it is Tamei. And the Gemara says, Tanya, because we learned in a Brayso, Rabbi Shimon says, Lo bi'arti mimenu b'tamei, I didn't finish it off in Tumah, and that means to say, Bein shani Tamei v'hu tar, whether I was Tamei and the Meiser Sheni was tar, Bein shani tar v'hu tamei, or whether I was tar and it was Tamei. And the Brayso says, V'heichon muzar alachingla. Now, where exactly is the warning? We see the reference over here in this pasuk, but where is the azhara that you're not allowed to eat it in such a state? Eini yodei, I don't know. And the Gemara interrupts and says, Tumas haguf. What do you mean? If the person himself is tamei, we do have a warning. Behed yoksiv, it's written explicitly. It says nefesh asher tiga bo v'tama ad ha'arev v'lo yochal min hakodashim. It says if the person is tamei, he doesn't eat from the kodashim, and that's a reference to Meiser Sheni. And Rashi explains, where is there a warning not to eat it betuma? Eini odei, I don't know. Talmud lomar lo suchal. Kachi shenuya b'sifri. Rashi says this is the text of the Sifri. Ukishakavua kana, when they put it in here in the Gemara, lo hispiku legomer, they don't finish quoting the Sifri ad akshi Gemara until the Gemara interrupts and asks, Tumas haguf, what do you mean? When it comes to the person being tamei, behed yaksiv bei, it's written explicitly, v'lo yochal min hakadoshim ki im rochatz. It says again, he shouldn't eat from the kadoshim. Umukminan la b'yavamas b'meiser, and we say in Yavamas that this is talking about Meiser, and we'll read the parentheses over here. Rabbeinu gufo tar v'yotzin ishmasu b'tara lo pirish yoser. It says Rashi over here, he died, and the rest of the parish is not Rashi. Mikan v'elach lashon talmido Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Nosson. From here onward is going to be the commentary of his student Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Nosson. Kachu lashon habraisa eini yodei lahechon muzar lakach tamad lomar lo suchal v'hashas lo shavik le'lasukei milsa. Again, he writes that the Gemara doesn't finish quoting the Brayso, elakadim uparach, but asks umatam, and the Gemara asks, "Amai kamer eini yodea." Why is it saying I don't know? Hatomas haguf behed yaksiva. Again, it's a pasuk. It says it explicitly. Nefesh asher tigabo lo yochal min hakadoshim ki imrachatz b'saro b'mayim ve'amrinon b'yavamas. And we say in Yavamas the high krab Meiser Sheni kamar that this pasuk is talking about Meiser Sheni to tav al v'yola ochel, etc. And the Gemara continues, Elo Tomas Atzmo Minayin. Rather, the question really is Tomas Atzmo, meaning if the Meiser Sheni is Tameh. Where do we know that from? Dechsib, because it's written in the pasuk, Lo Sucha Lechol B'Sharecha, Ulahalan Hu Omer B'Sharecha Tochlenu HaTameh V'Hatar. It says you can't eat in your gates. And then further on it says in your gates the Tameh and the Tahor will eat. And how do we understand this pasuk? V'Tanya Devei Rabbi Yishmael, and it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael, Afilu Tameh V'Tar Ochlin B'Kar Achas. You can even have a Tameh person and a Tahor person eating with one plate, ve'ein choshen, and there's no concern. And this over here, this part of the pasuk is actually talking about a bechor that has a mum, that has a blemish, and it's saying there's no concern of tumah by a bechor with a mum with a blemish. V'kamar achmana, and this is what the pasuk is saying. The pasuk is saying as follows: Hech tameh d'shari loch gabei tar. That situation of tumah of a tameh person together with a tar person that we allowed hasam over there, we allowed by the bechor bal mum, hach over here, lo seichel over here. You can't eat in that fashion. Meaning to say again, when the ma'aser sheni is tameh, you're not allowed to eat it. This is where we learn out the warning. And the Gemara continues, and from where do we know debar pediyahu? So how do we know that you're able to redeem meiser sheni that's tameh? Because the Mishnah, the first Mishnah, said that if a person eats the meiser sheni that's tameh in Yerushalayim, so the punishment is malchus, and the Mishnah refers to that as meiser sheni that was not redeemed. That implies that you are able to redeem it even in Yerushalayim. And how do we know that that is the case? And the Gemara continues and answers, Damar Rebbe Lazar, because Rebbe Lazar says, Minayin l'meiser sheni shenitma shepodin oso afilu b'Yerushalayim. From where do we know that meiser sheni, if it becomes tameh, one can redeem it even in Yerushalayim? Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, Kilo suchal se'eso. It says you're not able to carry it. The simple pshat of the pasuk is you can't bring the meiser sheni to Yerushalayim, and so instead you redeem it. And ve'ein se'es elo achila. But we understand se'es that it refers to the fact that you can't eat it because it's tameh. We can understand the pasuk in that fashion as well. As it says in the pasuk, "Vayisa masos me'es panav," and there it's talking about food, it's talking about eating, and so therefore again over here when it's tameh, it's lo suchal se'eso, you're not able to eat it, and that's why you're able to redeem it. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Bevi, Amar Rav Asi. Rav Bevi says that Rav Asi says, Minayin l'meiser sheni tar shapodin oso afilu b'psia achas chutz l'choma. From where do we know that meiser sheni, if it's pure, you can redeem it even if you're just one step outside of the walls of Yerushalayim? Again, the simple meaning of the pasuk is you're far away, you're not able to carry it all, and therefore you can redeem it. But how do we know it's true even if you're just one step outside of Yerushalayim? Shenamar, because the pasuk says kilo suchal se'eso, again from the same pasuk of kilo suchal se'eso, it means to say that any amount, if you're not in Yerushalayim, then you're able to redeem it. But the Gemara says, how can you learn two things from the same pasuk? Haimi boy leil l'chid Rebbe Lazar. Isn't that needed for what Rebbe Lazar just said? That in Yerushalayim, if it's tameh, you're able to redeem it. So now we're also learning out that if it's tahor, one step outside of Yerushalayim, you can redeem it. And the Gemara says we actually can learn out both. Because if that's all we were learning, le makra lo sucha lo ochlo. The pasuk could have just said you can't eat it. My se'eso, why use this language of se'eso? So that's adding this halacha as well. Again, it applies not only when you can't eat it because it's tameh, but also when you're one step outside of Yerushalayim. The Gemara says, but maybe that's all it's teaching us, that if it's one step outside of Yerushalayim. No, because if that was the case, it would have just said you're not able to take it. My se'eso, why use this language of se'eso? Shmami no tarti. We actually see both of these. Again, we see if it's tameh in Yerushalayim or even one step outside of Yerushalayim when it's tahor, you're able to redeem it. And the Gemara continues, Yosef, Rav Chanina, Rav Hoshia, and we'll go with the gears of the Bach over here. Rav Chanina and Rav Hoshia, they were sitting apischad Yerushalayim. They were sitting at the entrance of Yerushalayim, v'kami boy lahu, and they asked the following question: Pshita is obvious, hu bachutz u'maso b'fnim. If he is outside of Yerushalayim, but his burden is inside Yerushalayim, so then kaltu mechitzos. So then he's been admitted by the mechitzos, by the walls. It's already in Yerushalayim. You can no longer redeem the meiser sheni. But hu b'fnim u'maso b'chutz ma. What if he's in Yerushalayim, but all of his burden, all of the meiser sheni is outside of Yerushalayim? What would be the halach in that case? And the Gemara says, Tana lu ahusaba b'divei Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, a particular elder from the yeshiva, from the academy of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. He taught to them as follows: Ki yirchak mimcha hamakom. It has to be distant from you, and we understand that to mean mi miluecha. What that means to say is from you and everything that accompanies you. Meaning to say, if any part, whether it be the person's masoi, the burden, or whether it be himself in Yerushalayim, that's considered to be in Yerushalayim, and you can no longer redeem. As Rashi explains, if you're inside, or your burden is inside, that's not called distant. You can no longer redeem. You have to eat it over there. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rapapa asks the following question, Nakat le bekanya, let's say the Meiser Sheni, it's not on his shoulder, but it's being held by some kind of a pole. What would be the halacha over there? And the Gemara says, take with the Gemara leaves that as a question. Rashi explains, Boy Rapapa asks, Humi bifnim, let's say he's inside Yerushalayim, v'nakid maso bekanya orach, and then on a long reed, on a long pole, he has his burden, mi bachutz, and that's outside of Yerushalayim. What's the halacha? Kevin the lav mamish al ksefahu, since it's not actually on his shoulder, ein zeh miluo, that's not called miluo, maybe it has to actually be connected directly to his body, v'areu kamut al la'aretz, maybe it's like it's on the earth, v'nifta, and then it could be redeemed, because it really is not considered to have been in Yerushalayim. O Dilmar, maybe Kevin the naked le maso, maybe since again he's carrying it in some fashion, maso karina bay, rather we refer to it, since he's carrying it, it's called maso, it's called his burden, and the Gemara says teiku, the Gemara leaves that as a question. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabasi says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Meiser Sheni, when it comes to Meiser Sheni, let's say you eat the Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim, Me'emasai chayav and olav, from when are you chayav on that? Mishara pnei hachom, but the answer is that it has to actually see the inside of the wall, meaning it has to have been brought into Yerushalayim and then brought out, and then you are going to be liable when you eat it outside of Yerushalayim to the punishment of Malchus. Rashi says, Mishayira pnei hachoma, v'chutz l'choma demasisin, when the Mishnah says it's outside the wall, hainu da'ayle ve'afke, the Mishnah means you brought it in and then you took it out. That's what Ravasi is saying from Rabbi Yochanan. My time, what's the reason? The Yamar Kra, because the pasuk says, Lifnei Hashem elokecha to'ochlenu, eat it before Hashem. Uchsiv, and it's written, Lo sucha lechol b'sharecha, you can't eat it in your gates outside of Yerushalayim. What it means is, as long as you can refer to this as before Hashem, meaning it was brought into Yerushalayim, then we can say, you can't eat it outside of Yerushalayim. But if we cannot refer to it as before Hashem, you should eat it, meaning if it wasn't yet brought into Yerushalayim, then we can't say, Rashi explains, if it wasn't brought inside Yerushalayim, again, that prohibition does not apply. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, the Gemara asks a question on this. Rabbi Yossi says, Kohen sha'olsa biyado te'ena shal tevel, let's say a Kohen has a fig of tevel. Amar, he says, te'ena zu, with regards to this fig, trumasa b'uk, so the truma, I'm going to take it off by the stem. Meiser rishon b'tzvona, the Meiser rishon I'll take off by the north side. U'meiser sheni l'droma, and the Meiser sheni I'll take off over here on the south side. Vishnas Meiser sheni v'hu b'Yerushalayim, and let's say it's a year where Meiser sheni, it's a year of Meiser sheni, and he's in Yerushalayim. Oh, Meiser ani, or maybe it's a year of Meiser ani, again, in the third and the sixth year, you didn't do Meiser sheni, instead you did Meiser ani. So again, it's a year of Meiser ani, v'hu b'gvulin, and he's outside of Yerushalayim. Achla, if he eats it. And Rashi explains, V'hishnas Meiser Sheni, V'osa Shana Shni, it's the second year, let's say, the Shemitah cycle, Sharoi Liton Ba Meiser Sheni, that's a year you give Meiser Sheni. And Rashi continues, Meiser Ani B'gvul, and let's say it's a year of Meiser Ani outside of Yerushalayim. Shishnas Meiser Shlishis, for example, it's the third year of the Shemitah cycle. V'yamar Meiser Ani B'drom, and again he says Meiser Ani is in the south. V'lo'amar Meiser Sheni, doesn't say Meiser Sheni. V'u'afila B'gvul, and that would be even again outside of Yerushalayim. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Amud Aleph.